You'd be forgiven for thinking that buying a GPU on a budget was a near impossible task these days. But while retailer prices are still higher than we'd like, it's still possible to pick up a brand new 1080p and 1440p graphics cruncher from the likes of Nvidia, AMD and Intel for somewhat sensible cash. My name's Andy, and myself and the PC Gamer hardware team have been busy putting each of these 6 new offerings through their paces in our notoriously tough benchmarking suite. Many cards enter and, well, all of them leave, but we've gathered some tasty data along the way to let you know which cards are worth your cash and which are best avoided. So, from the surprisingly affordable Intel Arc B580 to the mid-range munching AMD Radeon RX 9070, there's some serious competition in the reasonably priced GPU market right now. But the question is, which should you pick? Let's have a look at our contenders, shall we? Let's kick things off with Nvidia's budget card, the RTX 5060. It's perhaps not the most exciting of graphics card choices, but being an Nvidia GPU available for reasonable money right now, you're probably wondering how it stacks up when compared to the competition. And the answer is fine, I guess. The $299 baby Team Green card is capable of delivering decent performance figures at 1080p, and is quite capable of acceptable frame rates at 1440p as well, especially when you factor in DLSS 4 and multi-frame generation support. Nvidia's latest iteration of its AI frame generation tech is the biggest selling point of the 50 series GPUs, and, this being one of they, the RTX 5060 can activate it in supported games, along with the rest of its more powerful siblings. That being said, Nvidia's MFG tech does have a tendency to introduce a significant amount of latency when the base frame rate isn't high enough, particularly on lower end cards. So don't expect to be able to whack the frame rate up with the AI tools without introducing some unwanted effects. The RTX 5060 is perhaps the most prone to these sort of drawbacks of Nvidia's current range, so it's worth bearing in mind when you're considering your next budget GPU purchase. It's also worth noting that the RTX 5060 is also only currently available in 8GB configuration, and that feels a little tight in 2025. While 8GB of VRAM is just about good enough for 1080p and 1440p gaming for now, it's something that could potentially become a drawback in the future. Still, the RTX 5060's biggest problem comes in the form of the next card on my list. Yes, the AMD Radeon RX 9060 XT. This little beastie might not be a total budget powerhouse, but it's been tuned and tweaked to the guns in every respect, with the key goal of giving the RTX 5060 a headache. Starting at $299 for the 8GB version, this card gives the Nvidia budget GPU a sound thrashing at 1080p and 1440p in our benchmarks. Still, there are some caveats to be aware of. Firstly, you're not going to be able to use DLSS, instead being limited to AMD's competing upscaling tech, FSR. While FSR 4 has shown some promising results so far in comparison to the latest version of DLSS, the supported games list is rather small, and upscaling support is pretty important if you want high frame rates in demanding games these days. And secondly, if you want the 16GB version, you'll be paying around $349, according to the official MSRP, but more like $380 at the time of recording. That pushes this card ever closer to the RTX 5060 Ti in price, and in our testing, the Ti manages to beat it by a small margin. Still, it's a very small margin, equating to just a few frames in most of our tests. The RTX 5060 Ti makes for a compelling counter to the miniature AMD monster, and now I mention it, I think one just walked in. Yep, this is the RTX 5060 Ti, and it's a pretty performant little gaming GPU. Here we find ourselves beginning to edge out of the budget segment and more towards the mid-range, although unfortunately, you'll be paying somewhere around the $400 mark for one of these. That being said, the 16GB variant of this card gave us a 75 frame per second average result in Black Myth Wukong at 1080p high settings, and that's a pretty impressive score in such a demanding game. Plus, you get full DLSS 4 and multi-frame generation support, and the card itself is mercifully light when it comes to power requirements. And, like the RX 9060 XT, it also has a tendency to run cool and quiet under heavy load, which makes it a great candidate for a small form factor build. That, combined with the fact that it's a decently powerful, somewhat reasonably priced Nvidia card in this day and age, has made it a popular choice for gamers looking for an upgrade. So, should you be picking up one of these? Well, in my opinion, it all comes down to money. Given the RX 9060 XT comes within touching distance of the RTX 5060 Ti in the benchmarks, if I could find the AMD card for significantly cheaper, that's where I'd be putting my cash. Put both of these cards side by side for similar money though, and it's this little Nvidia GPU that wins the day. Just. Now we're firmly into mid-range territory. The RTX 5070 is perhaps the most hotly anticipated graphics card of this generation, given the popularity and excellent mid-range performance of its ancestor, the RTX 4070. However, while the older card managed to sit in the sweet spot between price and performance, the RTX 5070 hasn't impressed us in the way we might have hoped. It's not that much faster than the RTX 4070 Super before it, which means if you're watching this video wondering whether you should upgrade your RTX 4070 or similar rig with this particular card, I'd hold fire for now. We're only just seeing the price drop to its $549 MSRP, and you're only likely to see a 13 to 15% jump in performance over the older mid-range GPU on average. That being said, you do get multi-frame generation to play with here, and it works reasonably well. Again though, don't be expecting RTX 4090-like frame rates without a latency caveat, as MFG isn't the cure-all for your performance woes that some may make it seem. So, the RTX 5070 is far from a complete washout, but we really were hoping for more of a generational performance boost. However, if you're building a new rig or replacing a much older GPU with something shiny and new, then it's not a bad choice, as long as you can find one at MSRP. Making things tougher for the RTX 5070 is this card, the AMD Radeon RX 9070. This particular GPU recently took the top spot on our best graphics card guide, and it got there by delivering a substantial amount of performance for a somewhat reasonable price. The RX 9070 isn't that much slower than the significantly more expensive RX 9070 XT, and that's a card that gives some of Nvidia's more expensive offerings a run for their money. The RX 9070 averages around 7% faster than the RTX 5070 across our benchmarks, and when both cards are overclocked, the AMD GPU comes out around 10% ahead. That extra performance difference might not sound like much, but it often results in a fair few more frames in some demanding games, and at this sort of level, every frame counts. Yep, overclocking is very much a thing with the RX 9070, and while Nvidia's 50 series cards are also capable of good overclocks in their own right, the RX 9070 edges ever closer to its much more expensive competition once you start playing with the sliders. Once again though, this being an AMD card, you don't get the benefits of Nvidia's multi-frame gen tech. And, it must be said, we're seeing RX 9070s retail for around $50 more than the RTX 5070, which does go some way to evening out the difference. Still, if I was shopping for a mid-range card with my own money right now, the RX 9070 is where I'd be aiming. This is the reasonably priced GPU that'll give you the best bang for your buck in the current graphics card market, and for that it should be applauded. What would a graphics card roundup be without a wild card? And here I've got an absolute doozy. Here we find ourselves tumbling back down to the budget end of the market with this, the Intel Arc B580. It's a 12GB card available for a mere $250, and that's made it a tempting proposition for gamers on a very tight budget. Yeah, about that. While the Intel card is certainly capable of delivering a decent whack of gaming performance, and manages to thrash the previous generation RTX 4060 in most of our benchmark suite, it did give my editor-in-chief some serious headaches when it came to testing it. That's because Intel's graphics card drivers are still something of a work in progress, which means that while the Arc B580 is capable of delivering good 1080p and 1440p frame rates for the cache, in our experience it sometimes refuses to play ball entirely. To this day, we've been experiencing crashes in certain games at certain settings, and that makes the budget Intel card tough to recommend. That being said, if you're very troubleshooting inclined and don't mind messing around with driver installs occasionally, or perhaps you only play one or two games that are known to work well with Intel cards, it's still worth considering. If you're looking for something to set and forget, however, it's probably a GPU best left alone for now. So, there we have it, a selection of tantalising graphics cards available for reasonable cash. While we're still not seeing prices fall to where we'd like them to be for new GPUs at the moment, the situation does seem to be easing, which means each of these cards are beginning to edge down towards sensible figures. Whatever your budget, there's likely to be something here that suits, but it's worth mentioning that PC Gamer tests and reviews all of the hottest new cards on our website, pcgamer.com. So keep checking in with us over there for the very latest info. We also cover plenty of hardware head-to-heads on this very YouTube channel, so make sure to give the like and subscribe buttons below a click for the latest content. My name's Andy, and I hope to see you in the next video. Until then, take care.